This conference will now be recorded.
Maybe we'll cancel the meeting today.
We need to get this done.
We gotta get this thing finished.
I know.
Not that I can give these two items to you at Monday's meeting, but
No. With
Can you ask Shalane if she can hear us?
Shalane,
can you hear us? Yep, she's nodding her head.
All right, so it's just the speakers in here or not?
Yeah, my screen says that the recording is in progress.
I've got that too.
So it's being recorded.
Okay.
She can hear us.
I just texted her so she can
But
hear us.
will we be able to hear?
She nodded that she can.
So one of them unmute and see if we can.
Shalane, can you unmute and let us see if we can hear you because our speakers are not working?
Alrighty, sure thing. Can you hear me?
Nope.
No.
No?
Do it again, Shalane.
Can you hear me now? I'm like, Sprint, hello,
I'm
can you
trying
hear
to see.
me?
Oh, hang on. Go ahead, Shalane.
Can you hear me?
So, I mean, yeah, it came through the computer when I turned the speaker on. So,
You
know what it was? We had that company in here today looking at our system.
oh,
That is true.
did you let them screw something up, Dave?
you know, with your name like Street, you know, possibly.
Through that.
You could-
hear everybody on the.
You can hear
Yeah,
us,
we
we just
can't
can't
hear
hear.
We can't hear anybody. I hear you now,
There I
though.
am. No.
That's about time.
We can always ask them to put them questions in the chat.
Yeah, so
Try that. Try that now.
God, I can't wait till we go back to just in-person
Gotcha.
meetings.
You got us?
Yeah, Shalane, if she could say something or somebody.
We need a test, Shalane.
Alrighty, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
No more gremlins. Let's do this.
All right. Are we still recording?
Yes.
All right. Notice is hereby given that the Lago Vista City Council is holding a special called meeting on Thursday, September 23rd, 2021 at 5:40 PM as prescribed by VTCA Government Code Section 551.041 to consider the following agenda items. Sandra, please note we have all of our council members in attendance, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to both flags. First, the U.S. flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. All right, we start with citizen comments. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing other than factual responses to specific questions, any items not on the agenda. We have a budget workshop tonight. Is there anybody that has any comments not related to budget workshop? All right, seeing none, we will move on. Work session, number one, fiscal year 2021, 2022 budget workshop. And I don't have anything to go with it, so Tracy, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, tonight I am wrapping up what is the final of our budget workshops so that we can have an approved budget come next Monday. That is your special meeting on the 27th, where you will actually approve the tax levy and the budget. We will be in compliance with all the things that we need to. And this has been a long haul on a short train ride, so to speak, in the last couple of months, but I think we've finally gotten it to where we need to be. I have not a whole lot of information to give tonight, but there are two things that are very important to the budget that I think we need to at least discuss before you approve a budget on Monday. For those of you that are actually online and would like to look at the budget, it is actually on our website. It is under our document center. And once you get to the document center, you're going to go to finance, and then you're going to go to budget, and it will be our 4th draft proposed budget. And it will have today's date, we think. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to get there, because I know the mayor's crying right now.
Under finance. The 4th draft.
That would be it.
Bam, there it is.
Thank you, Star. So looking at this, I want to go and go through and point out a couple of things that I think are important. On the second sheet, under the general fund, you're going to see that our surplus is now at 1.7. So 1,798,817. If you will recall, when we came to you with everything in the kitchen sink, we were about at 1.8. We went back and made some revisions. We took out some things. Then we had another budget workshop. We talked about several programs. The council talked about the CIPs. We also talked about some other things that the council wanted to see in the budget. We were about 2.2 at that time, and now we're getting down to the very end. Based on the two items that I'm going to talk about tonight, we have already added one of the items in. We are at 1.7 in surplus for the general fund, which I think is remarkable considering all that we have done with this budget. You will also see that under aviation, the surplus is 254. If you will recall, and you will see on Monday, there are some budget amendments, but the fuel for the aviation was a large expense this year, but they still came out $254 whole dollars to the good. Then you will note under the pro shop, under the golf course surplus, it is actually straight across the board. So we come out even. There is no extra money to spend. Yes.
But I noticed we couldn't get that transfer down to 400,000. It's still at 438.
Yes.
I got to point it out.
Point it out.
We appreciate it.
Mhm.
Love you.
And I just want to reiterate the reason why I was harping on that is that it seems to me that there's got to be a kind of cultural change there to treat this like a real business and really go after revenue and be inventive about things. And to me, setting it at 400 provides a little bit more incentive to do that. That was the reason why I was asking for it.
And I appreciate that feedback. I also don't want to set that golf course up right now. I think that the golf director has actually tried to keep his expenditures down so much instead of going after that for this next coming year, it actually was somewhat of a detriment to the golf course, as we all know. And so we want to make sure that he is still able to do what needs or is necessary for that golf course. Having said that, revenue is extremely important and it has been stressed. And so one of the things that you will see in the future is that the sign sponsorships and some of the other things that we had discussed will be coming forward. And so that revenue is a big piece to what they will be doing in the next year.
A couple things. I did get a call the other day about one.
But you did.
Yeah. But I think that was after a conversation I had with Chris down at Travis Cup. I will also state that I think I'm the one council member up here that reiterated to everybody in the world, if we accept a expense budget, we expect him to spend it.
Yeah.
So, I'm all in favor of that. My contention is that I really wish that we could have come up with inventive ways to increase the revenue by 38 grand to keep it down.
Thank you.
I'm stopping right there.
I fully support that. And, I think at this point, it's probably a little late in the cycle to force a number change because it's been the same number for the last 3 meetings.
Correct.
But I would say that for me, success means that we meet the expenditure budget of the golf course and we far exceed the revenue so that the transfer comes down. That's the definition of success for me, for a golf course, which I think is your whole point, Kevin.
Exactly.
Got it.
I would agree. If you will go to page 5, and this is going to be under our utility fund, we will have a surplus of a little over $1 million. That is one of the reasons why we will be talking about, we've been doing a utility rate study, and I will talk a little bit more about that. I just want to point out all of the consolidated statement right now. If you go to page 6, under hotel occupancy, there is a surplus of 52,100. And that one is surprising to me considering the fact that there's still the effects of COVID and those types of things. But I guess the Airbnbs are still going strong. So
Is part of that due to the fact that we're so limited in what we can spend our hot taxes on?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Hot taxes are spent heads and beds, whatever brings people. So
Right.
Logofest will be one of those things that
Sure.
it brings tourism to us. So.
Yeah, at a high level, is there something, so Logofest certainly is one we all know. I'm looking at the expenditures, 148,500. Is there any major thing or is it just a collection of small things other than Logofest?
Well, give me 1 second. I will go to.
That's the biggest.
Certainly
is the biggest,
yeah.
and
But we
40,000.
do donate to other things like 4th of July. La Primavera, I believe we make contributions to several organizations, bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But if you add up 6, 7, 8 organizations, you'll get to 30,000.
Okay, and then so maybe 80% of this number, whatever, is Logofest.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the level I was looking at.
Okay.
That's fine, thank you.
I'm flipping as fast as I can since I'm in a stack. The next page is page 7 under our, let's see where I'm at, construction fund. So this has a surplus of 1.8. That is due to the ARPA funds that we will be getting in regards to the Relief Act, the American Rescue Relief Act. The other important thing about that is to remember it is only capable of being spent on water and sewer infrastructure. If we were giving a pension to our employees or for broadband infrastructure meaning you have to be ground ready. So there are some real specific things in regards to all of these things. So that 1.8 we have sitting there, and you have to show it programmed for 2 years, but you have to spend it in 4 years.
We got plenty of water and wastewater projects.
That's exactly
That's
what
not a problem.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's a great place to use it.
And then our final, I believe this, nope, not my final. Under water, you're gonna see on page 8, surplus is 30,000. And that is revenue from impact fees, which I will speak more about in just a moment. On page 9, you have the park fund, a whopping 500 is our surplus from the park fund. And that rounds out all of our consolidated statements. And I have pointed out all of the surpluses. And so this, I think, is a pretty darn good budget considering the fact that we have discussed lowering our tax levy and our tax rates. And we have some pretty substantial projects and programs and employees and equipment built into this. So it's pretty significant considering the fact that we're almost 4 cents down.
We do.
The 2 items that I want to discuss tonight, the first one being that at last Thursday's meeting, there was a lot of discussion in regards to the impact fee. And the council expressed a great desire to make sure that whatever we are getting from the impact fees, that we are getting as much as we possibly can from those impact fees. Those impact fees actually have a certain amount that we can put towards any of the projects, and unless you do a specific study, you cannot do more than 50%. So in the conversation that you were having, you wanted to make sure that we are actually utilizing those impact fees for projects and things that we need to. We have reached out to our consultant, Freeze and Nichols. They can do a detailed, what's called a credit calculation. That credit calculation tells us it will gather data. It will prepare a final financial calculation for us. They'll do a review meeting, finalize and maximize all of our allowable impact fees. So this will tell us if we can use more than 50% on any of these projects that we were putting forward. And then they will make a presentation. This is not a cheap expense. You get what you pay for kind of thing. It's about $19,000 for them to do this, but it is a good return on our investment because it will tell us whether or not we can utilize more of our impact fees towards projects. And so I am bringing that to you. We put it in the budget. It is already there. So that 1.7 surplus for us includes that expense. That expense I did put under the capital expense on page 207. You will see a water wastewater impact fee study. There was already 20,000, and then we added the 19,000, which brought it to 39,000.
Will it be paid for out of the general fund or out of the utility fund?
This is out of the utility.
Okay.
No, that's the impact fee.
Impact fee. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And does it cover more than 1 year?
Well, this actually will tell us what we can do from this point forward.
Okay.
So the calculation is so that we know that we can actually do more than 50%. Right now, that is a cap for us because we have not done this detailed study. Once we do this detailed study, we will be able to collect more. I believe it's over a 5-year period.
Okay.
The study is good for 5 years before you have to do it again.
We got,
The study's good for 5 years.
so
We can come back and do it sooner if circumstances change drastically.
And if we have a substantial growth or we
Absolutely.
stop on a dime, those would be
Absolutely.
two situations that would cause us
Mhm.
to potentially come back to it again.
So to me, this is a no-brainer, right? Because what we're saying is spend $19,000 to be able to collect a lot more in impact fees. And so I think there's probably some overhead for city staff to keep track of the more complexity of project by project rather than just making everything 50%. But, you know, if the city staff is signing up for doing that so that we get big return on our $19,000 investment, then I'm all in on this one.
well, and we heard a lot of comments on Thursday that said that is something that you are seriously wanting to consider. So I appreciate that every staff got into the wiggle of trying to figure out what that cost is and what we can get for that. And I appreciate STAR being able to drop it into the budget in a short time period. So
Now, just a question. The 50% is what we can spend right now.
yes, we can put towards
This-
projects.
Okay, this study would look at whether or not we can put more towards projects,
Mhm.
but it doesn't change what we collect as impact fees.
No.
It does change what we collect.
Go ahead.
Yes, Terry.
Sorry, no. So the amount that you're able to collect from impact fees is based on a specific calculation. You look at the total amount and there is a credit that has to be applied. You either apply a 50% across the board credit if you haven't done a study. And then that limits how much you can collect. That will ultimately limit the impact fee amount that you adopt.
Okay.
Or if you do a study and the study shows that you have all these projects in your CIP for the next 10 years that necessitates collecting a greater percentage, 60, 70, 80, 90%, because you have that much growth that demands those additional dollars from new development, then your number becomes bigger, and therefore your end result is that your impact fee will be larger. You can collect on a per unit basis a larger number.
Nope.
But is it also true that, you know, we established our impact fee of 50% based on a projection of growth.
Yes.
Yes.
And if we grow more than we anticipate, we're still going to get impact fees for every unit that is permitted, correct?
Yes, you will collect that impact fee is on a per unit basis. It applies whether we grow exactly as predicted or better than predicted. Obviously, you get less money if we don't have as much growth as predicted. That's why it's important to be conservative in your prediction, so that your denominator, the number you're dividing by, is smaller. But it's also the reason why you can go back and do another study or recalculation in a period shorter than 5 years, because if you have explosive growth, that creates a significantly greater demand, and therefore we don't have the money in our coffers to pay for all this new infrastructure. We need to be collecting it so that we can have the money in the coffers to have the time to build the additional infrastructure to serve this new growth. You can be more nimble about it. But yes, the answer, yes.
Good.
So I'm hearing a consensus for keeping this in.
Yes.
Okay. Explain. The only other item that is different from what we have been looking at is several people have been on a committee, Councilor Marion, Councilor Sullivan, and Councilor Prince, on our utility rate fee committee, so that we can look at what that rate that we are collecting now. There was a real consideration to reduce that rate. And so you have been working diligently on trying to figure out whether or not we could do this in a timely manner for the budget. A couple of things have come up in the last couple of meetings that have caused us to kind of put a pause on reducing that rate at this time. So in this budget, we have continued with the exact same rate that we had in the previous adopted budget cycle. That does not mean that it will stay there. It means that as we continue to do a couple of things, which we are going to be talking to our financial advisor, because we've talked a little bit about our debt structure and possibly a bond, which we will have that conversation at another time. But because those things are relative, we'd like to know what that impact is on our debt. We'd also like to know what that impact is when we're trying to look at what we're going to fund some of these projects out of that fund with. And so there has been a consideration from this committee that we will keep the rate where it is right now until we can finish doing our due diligence. And then we will come back to the council when we have better data and a better recommendation. This is so we can get a budget adopted, but we can do a budget amendment after this fact if that is necessary, if you decide to lower that rate, or if it shows that we need to go up on that rate. So at this time, we'd like to recommend that we are keeping that rate the same for now while we finish out a couple of other things that we need to do in response to that.
Good.
And if I might, I would add, I think the committee is every bit as much in favor of attempting to give relief to citizens as when we started. But when we started, we talked about being practical and responsible.
Yep.
And we feel like that's what we're doing at this point by not just knee jerk saying we got to do a reduction. But we are very much still committed to it. And we're looking at some very inventive things. We raised some eyebrows, but they are worth consideration because they could potentially lead to some relief to citizens. And so we're going to go through that effort, and it's just going to take us a little bit more time.
Yeah, that great comments, Kevin. And I would kind of restate the same thought, and to say that I think those of us, certainly council members on the subcommittee, all believe that a rate reduction is possible, but we don't yet have enough data to say this is the rate reduction that we recommend. And we don't want to do something in a preliminary fashion that we later come back and say, oops, we overshot the mark. So we're begging for some additional time here by saying for now, let's keep the rates constant.
I would say that's exactly right. And that's what I was going to point out, is that we would rather take the time to do it right than to have to set a rate and then next year have to walk that very same rate back or even sooner. So yeah, definitely appreciate everyone's patience.
So since there's a consensus on that, this is the balanced budget that we will bring forward on Monday. to the council for adoption. Still has the tax levy at 0.6070. We have added and included or redacted anything that the council gave us during our budget workshops, including the city app and a couple of other things. We've made all the changes in this document. So this is what will be coming to you on Monday for adoption. You will have you will adopt the budget, you will adopt the tax levy, you will adopt 3 different policies, one being the credit card policy, one being the financial or fiscal and budgetary policy, and one is your investment policy. I say all that to say you're going to see a couple of changes in the credit card and the fiscal and budgetary policy. Investment policy is what it is. But we will come back to you with a specific procurement policy after you have adopted these, because I'd like to pull that specifically out of the fiscal and budgetary and have it stand alone, because it needs a whole lot more depth. So we'll bring all those to you on Monday.
Do we have those to review?
She is getting the packet together as we speak.
Excellent.
We're all getting credit cards.
Oh, no, kidding. No.
I actually wanted to go back to, in the same vein of the feedback that Councilor Sullivan and I were giving on the golf course. I want to give similar feedback on the airport, because year over year, there's a, relative to last year's budget, in this budget, there's a much higher amount of fuel that's being sold.
Mm-hmm.
And theoretically, the point of selling fuel is that it generates positive revenue for the city. What it looks like in the budget is we have a lot more revenue, but we also have offsetting expense, and with the bottom line is relatively unchanged year over year. So so I would suggest there certainly should be a goal to make more money if we're going to sell more fuel. And you know, if we're not really making money off the fuel that we sell, then the activity we're putting into it may not be worth it. So I'm not suggesting we change the numbers, but we just suggest that city staff kind of keep that in mind, that the objective is to make money off of fuel that we sell. I know they do, but it just, I don't think it's reflected in the budget in terms of the more revenue generating more profit.
I think the strategy that was previously put into place was, let's price it the absolute lowest we possibly can to attract people here.
That is correct.
I'm not so sure that makes sense, to be honest with you.
That's what I'm saying.
And so maybe that's a policy that you want to review, Tracy.
That is something that we are looking at. In order for this airport to really be something that is of a revenue generator, there needs to be more focus on the economic side, the economic development side of that, so that offset from the fuel. But you're correct. We have been actually basing that fuel price lower so that people actually come in, so that we get more exposure. But it also means that we're able to make some money off of that fuel. So the more that they come, the better off we are. We've also made some significant changes up there in regards to the fuel, so that people will not have such a hard time purchasing it. And we hope that that will help sell it as well.
Yeah.
Good.
I wonder if there's a website that shows different airports, their fuel price at a particular time.
And that's why people visit us.
And then,
I'm told the pilots have an app they use and make real-time decisions of where they're going to buy their fuel.
but as gas prices go up, we should take our price up. And then when they lower, we should lower.
And please remember,
And that
we've
keeps
had
it
hurricanes,
constant.
so that definitely impacts the price. Hurricanes and elections, weather and elections,
Gotcha.
somehow. It's
Gotcha.
always good.
Well, we also got to remember, we're not a for-profit business
No,
too.
we're not.
So, yeah, we want to make revenues, and we want excess revenues so that we can spend them on projects. But, you know, in the end, it's got to be.
Well, we definitely want to make money up there to help continue to improve the airport.
Right.
Exactly.
I just don't want people out in the audience think, oh, well, the city's just trying to make profit off of the airport.
No, thanks for that clarification. And where my head is at on that is it's an enterprise fund. And so we want to make money on fuel at the airport so we can spend that money on the airport.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thanks for clarifying that.
And just one last comment. I can't remember enough, but when we bought the fuel tank, I don't know if we used money we got from TxDOT Aviation, but bottom line is if we get the block grants that come through from the FAA, any money we make from those assets has to stay with the airport.
That is true.
So people just need to know that any money we do make from that concession, the money has to stay up there to help improve the airport and operate the airport.
That is all I have for you tonight.
Is there any action we have to take tonight?
No.
You were just
You
seeking
take-
consensus?
Yep.
Okay.
And I got
May I ask, and I know we've got the packet coming, are there any major changes in the budget policy you said is changing? I mean, that
Yes.
we should, we should have a heads up on to,
There
even
are
before we read.
two places in the fiscal and budgetary. One is I have put in that we are taking our purchase orders from 500 to 1,000. I'm doing that because as far as administrative and for the fact of not being bureaucratic, but still keeping an eye on how purchases are made, 1,000 still is, I think, something that doesn't restrict, but it also doesn't allow for overspending. They still have to come and get a purchase order, but at 500, we are wearing finance out because we're doing more spending right now. So administratively, it's just not prudent. The second place is that we put a section in for grants. As you know, because of all of the relief funds and all of the grants that are coming out, there's a little bit of ambiguity on staff's part as to when a grant needs to come to the council, whether it is something that we are getting just reimbursed, we are getting carte blanche, a grant for the CARES or the COVID relief, or we have to put up a matching monies. And so we have put in a graph so that staff can see and council can see very clearly when something needs to come to council for applying and when something needs to come for approval and acceptance. Everything comes for approval and acceptance, but when it comes to applying, any grants under $49,999, which is the same approval rate, will have my signature and then will go and be applied for. So it reflects the same as our budget authority, our expenditure authority. And so we have put that in there. And then the credit card, we have just changed quite a bit of the language just to make sure that we are doing a better job at documenting, putting some restrictions in place where necessary so that we don't have people going outside of the procurement policy and purchasing through the credit cards as opposed to going through the right steps. So we're trying to just do a better job at including some language. Our procurement policy is small, minuscule at best, and we are doing more purchases. There is nothing wrong with having a small procurement, but it leads to a lot of departments and employees doing their own interpretation of what they can and cannot do when it comes to getting quotes, bids, and those things. So we will focus on putting together an entire procurement policy that will be outside of the budget and fiscal policy so that our staff and council can see exactly how we're going to procure and do expenditures for certain amounts. And so we will bring that back to you at another time.
Good, sounds good.
Great.
All right,
That's it.
any last comments? Let's see, Shalane does not have her hand up. All right, anybody in the audience, any quick comments for anybody? All right, I am seeing done. So I will call this meeting adjourned at 6:11 PM.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
You can stop recording.